Hello and welcome to the James Xander Trip, where we dive into spirituality, psychedelics, altered states of consciousness, the nature of reality, and how we can bring all of this down to earth to improve our mind, connect with our heart, and up-level our relationship with life. Joining me today is Charles Morgan. When I met Charles, I instantly felt a kinship to him because he understood the 1 billion humans mission, my mission to unite the planet with the help of psychedelic medicine. And as I got to know him, I realized this is a really fascinating individual who has a wide breadth of experience across so many different domains. He was raised by a Qigong master, graduated from MIT, trained with the last living student of Swami Dharendra Brahmachari. He has a background in neuroscience, and he's also got a background in the venture capital world. So it's this fascinating mix of being in the cutthroat business environment for many years, and then having this spiritual awakening and going on this wild spiritual journey that involves breathwork, psychedelics, Kundalini yoga, shifting timelines and dimensions, and so much more. So without further ado, Charles Morgan, welcome to the James Xander Trip.
Oh, James, what a beautiful introduction. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for our conversation. And yeah, I'm just really excited for the mission that you have wholeheartedly thrown yourself into, because it was just a passing thought that I had when I was younger that, oh my goodness, like the experience that I had in my first couple of mushroom trips. And I really had this idea, and I remember thinking about it and talking about it with my friends in college. But then life just happened, and like hearing you at that beautiful villa in Canggu in your introduction say that sentence, it was like the timeline just collapsed for me, and I was like,
Wow.
"Oh my God, James!"
I love that.
it was like yeah, like with the like almost like Inception, like a dream within a dream, when you remember that you were dreaming and you were like on the wrong path for a while, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, this person is the vehicle." And I have great respect for you and what you're doing, and I hope that I can be a positive force in helping you make it true.
It was so cool when you came up after the introductions and you're like, I had the same idea.
Yeah.
And it was like, people have told me it's a cool mission, but you're the first person that said, I've had the same resonance that I received, the same download from the universe. And that's really special.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that I had a download. I was like, what would happen if a critical mass of people on the planet, actually managed to check their own ego in an like deeply emotional way? And then it was gone, But like you are putting it into reality, and I still believe it will work. And I'm here to add my little flavor to hopefully bring the community that we're putting together behind the book Don't Punk Out, and behind the organization about the Big Amygdala Energy World Alliance, and this stuff that we're working with in terms of everything that you talked about in your intro, spirituality, altered states of consciousness, psychedelics, all of it is in the interest of building a better world.
Yeah.
And I joke about this sometimes at cocktail parties, but if you're not interested in building a better world, then I kind of don't have anything to say to you.
You want to be surrounded by people on a mission.
The right mission. Because there are some people that have bad missions. There's some people whose mission is to make $1 billion. There's some people whose mission it is to accelerate the advent of transhumanism. There's some people who are on a mission to make $1 billion on commercializing direct-to-consumer mRNA technology. It's like, and I think all of these things, not all of them, but many people's missions fall into the fallacy of hubris.
How do you tell if your mission is falling in that fallacy?
Oh, easy. The definition of hubris in terms of the original Greek mythology stories is when a human believes that they can challenge the gods.
So when we talk about transhumanism and AI, for example, or people implanting chips into their brain, what are your thoughts on that? I'd be really curious to hear why that mission is hubris.
I think it's driven by fear.
Of death?
Yes. It's driven by fear of death that comes from an unfortunate misunderstanding of the role of life. And perhaps it's because I was raised in a Chinese household. And, so like my mother's Chinese, my father's American. And so I have these two sides. And in, it sounds wild to say it, but in extremely deep states of meditation, I can actually sense the two parts of my genetic code fighting each other's neuroses.
Oh, wow.
Right? There's the Anglo-Saxon neuroses from my Welsh lineage. There's the Chinese neuroses from that lineage. And both of these cultures are now meeting in the middle of the world, meeting in the face of globalization. And there are so many medium tier problems that people are trying to solve. And I think these medium tier problems will only continue to be replaced, like the head of Hydra. Right? Like the story from Hercules, you chop down a head, or it's replaced by 3. You chop down a head, it's replaced by 3. It's only until you get to the final immortal head that you can actually slay the beast. And I believe that this final immortal head, when it comes to deciding what mission to dedicate your life to, comes down to peace. Immortality won't give you peace. It just gives you more time to keep solving problems.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And I think this was this is how Buddha beat the game. It's like, money, power, fame, sex.
Mm-hmm.
You can have all that. You can have it. I got peace of mind.
Yeah.
My currency is infinity.
The thing with peace is it doesn't sound sexy to people.
Oh, well, that's because you need to talk about it in a sexy way.
That's why I brought you on.
You need to make it sexy. You need to make it cool, right? And the thing that we spent so much of our first night together talking about, like I didn't come up with any ideas. I'm a self-proclaimed regurgitator, but I do have a certain comedic flavor. I do have a certain style.
You have a way with words.
Thank you. They say that the people who are obsessed with words are the ones that find it hardest to communicate. So I think that's where I started. I started from a place of being an extremely introverted kid that was diagnosed with ADHD that was smashing the math tests. I was an electrical engineer and material scientist that would spend 12 hours in the lab with my oscilloscope, perfectly happy. And I chose that direction because I learned very early on that it was so difficult for me to communicate. And so to kind of go on the journey that I've gone on to end up in this room with you saying that I have a way with words, it's like, thank you. Thank you truly, because I spent most of my life without it. And I hope that I can do my part in terms of making peace of mind not only an attractive thing, but an attainable thing. And that's where I believe the transhumanists and the longevity people are missing the biggest picture. They think the biggest picture is to cure the disease of death, not realizing that if you did such a thing, then your soul would be trapped in the prison of this physical body forever. Right? And perhaps that comes from, they don't believe as I believe in reincarnation. They don't believe in multiple timelines. They don't believe in the expansiveness of their soul because they're completely disembodied people that live completely in the mind. I had a conversation just recently about non-separation, which I think is something that we touched on in our first conversation, and then something that I actually watched in one of your YouTube videos is this feeling that when you take psychedelics in an appropriate dosage, not too much, not too little, but when you take it in an appropriate dosage in the right environment, you feel a connectedness, right? You understand your role in this planet. And this is something that Alan Watts speaks about in a lot of his lectures.
So beautifully,
is that the Western mythology of the God King, right? Sort of, it's like, this is the religion that we have inherited from the West is a political religion that comes from the feudal times, right? That comes from even in the most even more ancient than that, right? The pharaoh of all pharaohs, the king of all kings, right? In Persia, right? Like in Egypt, right? Like there's this kind of cognitive dissonance in the mythology that Alan Watts talks about. And I don't know if I could even, scratch the surface as eloquently as he did, but when I was listening to it, I understood why I don't think those things. And it is because of this sort of Asian Taoism that I was raised in. My Chinese name is literally what they call the line in the middle of the yin and yang symbol. My mother is a huge student of Qigong, of Chinese medicine, of understanding the natural law and how to work within that. And I think there is some argument to be made about, if we conquer all disease by using medicine and chemistry and pharmaceuticals to do such a thing, then we are in fact mastering the natural law. And yet that's fine. Let's live without disease. Let's live to be young, and have like beautiful, able bodies until the moment that we die. That's great. But living forever is a fundamental disrespect of your soul. And the reason why I think a lot of folks have this fundamental disrespect of their soul is because they've never felt it. They've never felt it. Yeah. And I hope that by demystifying the Eastern mysticism, with the neuroscience work that we've done, with the hard-hitting raw science, and just like the pure experience of what it feels like when you breathe in this certain way and you think in this certain way, and we can show it on a brain scan that by doing these two things in the right way, with proper form, you can stimulate blood flow into the specific region of the brain. You stimulate enough blood flow into that region of the brain repeatedly over a certain number of days, you can grow new neurons in that region of the brain, right? And there is this part of the brain, the anterior cingulate cortex, right? It's just one of the main characters in the book Don't Punk Out. What the anterior cingulate cortex does in the brain is it is responsible for the prediction of pleasure and pain and delayed gratification. And what the neuroscience shows is that people who spend time habitually doing things they don't want to do, such as exercising, right? People that exercise have bigger ACCs than people who don't exercise, right? And people that hate cold water or that are scared of water and do ice baths have bigger ACCs than people that only take nice warm showers and go to saunas. Right. And this part of the brain, the neuroscientists, they talk about is not just the source of willpower, right? Like in the sense of the delayed gratification, but they think it's actually the source of the will to live. And in people that, in post-mortem autopsies of people's brains, the ACC is small, atrophied, and dysfunctional in people that commit suicide.
So interesting. So the will to live, it's like you can physically measure that.
We're trying, and we have a clue. And there's so much about the brain that we don't know, but there is so much that we have learned just since the year 2000. And in the scale of science, this is relatively recent. I mean, the main study that started it all for me was published in 2009 by Professor Richard Davidson from the University of Madison, Wisconsin. And he and his team basically took the tools, being these fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI machines, and the sort of experimental protocols that neuroscientists were using to study traumatic brain injury and their effect on behavior, as well as basically just categorically extremely negative behavioral issues and what might be the underlying neurological connection, if any, right? And he and his team decided, hey, we're studying traumatic brain injury using these techniques. Like we're studying, anxiety, depression, addiction with these techniques. What if we were to study the extremely positive human emotions? what's up with this superhuman compassion that these Buddhists are talking about?
Oh, yeah.
What's up with this superhuman peace of mind that these yogis claim to have? What's up with that? Right? And so they went into the Himalayan mountains, found some yogis and Buddhists, and threw them in these machines. Well, not threw them. They had to convince them.
That would be a stressful experience.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, but they were chilling because
they were perfectly zen about being thrown into the MRI machine.
Because what they found was that in fact these people have 5 times larger amygdalas than a normal person, that's going about their day-to-day life. And the amygdala is the center of the fight or flight response in the human brain. It is the part of the brain that when you hear a sound or see a thing, that the amygdala is directly jacked into your longest term memory, right? If any of these sounds or sights trigger something that from your long-term memory that indicates danger, the amygdala immediately turns on cortisol production.
To get you ready to run.
To get you ready to run, to get you ready to fight, right? And this is the part of the brain that allowed us to evolve out of the dangerous jungle, but it is the part of the brain that in contemporary society where there's no more tigers, well, I mean, there's tigers, but they're in cages, there's just like, it's this is the part of the brain that makes you triggered. Anytime anybody says, oh, I'm feeling triggered right now,
it's their amygdala.
It's the amygdala. That's it. It's that simple, right? And in people that have severe PTSD, people that have bipolar disorder, and what the neuroscience has actually shown that we talk about in the book is that you have a certain number of hits to the amygdala. And by hits, I mean the amygdala has become so overstimulated that it short circuits, like zzz, right? And this research that came out of the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, they basically did intake surveys on enlisted soldiers, and they tracked over time how many severe combat episodes they experienced and how many of them had PTSD and like how much PTSD, like are they on medication? Are they like strangling their girlfriend? Are they like running away every time a car backfires, right? So they have enough of this data now. They know that it takes less than 10 severe combat episodes for someone to be completely and extremely bipolar, to the point of needing medication, right? What this means is that the amygdala has just become dysfunctional. That's all it means. And meanwhile, you have these yogis and Buddhists that by doing a specific form of meditation, not meditation in general, not yoga in general, like TM, Transcendental Meditation, does not affect your amygdala at all. It does not help you get not triggered. It will lower your cortisol production. It will de-stress you over time, but in the acute instance of a fight or flight response, it doesn't help, right? But doing this specific form of what they call bhavana, right? Which bhavana is the technical term from yoga that involves savara, which is the science of breath, and mantra, which is words of protection, right? So you're basically inducing psychedelic states through breath, and then when you're in this flow state, where you have increased neuroplasticity, you recode yourself with this mantra, right? By doing this specific form of bhavana, they were able to stimulate blood flow into the amygdala and end up with 5 times more neurons in it. And that's why when they put them through this fMRI machine and they show them a series of images of like, it's like a 2-hour test. It's called the emotional affectivity test, right? They see like a sunrise, a little sunset, a little waterfall, and then boom, an image of a guy burning to death. And the audio is playing of him burning and shrieking, right? A normal person goes through this, they see it, and they can see in real time on the fMRI. Blood flows into the amygdala region. There's like a certain amount of magnetic activity, like electrical activity. And it takes 5 to 10 minutes for it to return to baseline. In those 5 to 10 minutes, they call that an amygdala hijack. That means the amygdala has completely caused the blood to flow out of your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that is you. This is your personality. This is your executive function. This is the rational part of the brain. In an amygdala hijack, all the blood is pulled out of the prefrontal cortex and moved into the motor sensory cortex, right? I mean, like you're ready to run, you're ready to fight, you're ready to kill, right? And there's no stopping it. Hysteria, what people used to call hysteria. I mean, they probably still do, like a psychotic break, a hysterical reaction, a neurotic situation. It's an amygdala hijack. Your amygdala has taken over your entire brain, your pure hormones, your pure fear. And it's in these 5 to 10 minutes that if you're in a romantic relation, or if you're in a fight with your romantic partner, that's when you say the meanest thing that you can say. If you're in a business setting, that's when you do the most cutthroat thing that you can do.
Because you're not run by your logic or rational mind anymore.
Yeah, you're just trying to get safe.
Right. Why does a bigger amygdala mean that the person has more control over that?
Well, the working explanation is that as blood flows into it and electrical signals bounce around the amygdala and out into the surrounding regions of the limbic system is the one that kind of like, it's like sensory information goes in, hormonal responses come out. And by having more folds, more neurons through which this electrical signal can travel to, it actually slows it down. The same way that an electron moving through one resistor versus an electron moving through many resistors, right? If you know, in an electrical engineering analogy, if you wanted to like circuit model it, that would be the working theory, is that by having more time, well, rather the same amount of time, but more neurons through which to flow, you're able to actually regulate better, right? So when a normal person goes through this emotional affectivity test, it takes 5 to 10 minutes for them to return to baseline. When a psychopath goes through this test, they have a smaller electrical spike, meaning like much less blood flows into the region, and they return to baseline in 5 to 10 seconds, right? And it's this difference of 5 to 10 seconds versus 5 to 10 minutes, which is why psychopathic behavior is rewarded in a business setting.
Because you're unemotional.
You're unemotional. You're able to experience a traumatic event and maintain your cool, so that, because that's what's valued in business, is that can you maintain your cool, right? But when these advanced practitioners of this Bhavana technique go through this test, they have a stronger emotional spike than the normal person, meaning even more blood flows, to the point that they, like, you know, a normal person might see the image of the person burning and say like, oh, that's sad, right? This Buddhist will be moved to tears, and they'll have a bigger emotional spike, but they'll recover in 5 to 10 seconds.
Ah, okay. So it's like the opposite of a psychopath. They're feeling the compassion and the emotion far stronger.
And they're still recovering as quickly as the psychopath.
Right.
Right. And so this is what we say in the book is the ideal candidate for leadership.
Talk a little more about that.
If you are in charge of a large amount of people, possibly, you know, like the human brain is only capable of, you know, having close interpersonal connections with like 250, 300 people. There's some number that I forget the name of the guy that posits this number, but
I even heard it was 150.
Maybe, but yeah, it's like Richard Branson. He says that like there's so many individual virgin companies because he believes in this principle. It's like anytime one of the companies gets more than this number, where people lose the ability to associate a face with a first name basis, he doesn't create a new division. He breaks up the company, right? Like there's like Virgin Atlantic, Virgin North America, Virgin Mobile, Virgin this, Virgin, there's like some hundreds of Virgin companies. Each of them is less than 200 employees or something like that. And so this is, you know, when you have these mega companies that are multinational, that have thousands of employees across dozens of offices, and you're one CEO making judgments, decisions that affect all of them, whether it's employment packages, severance packages, criteria for promotion, criteria for firing, you know, like no matter what decision you make, when you're on that scale, you're marginalizing someone. Like my first job was in cybersecurity, and we worked with big data, and we used to say internally that there's no way you can have access to this much data and not be evil. 'Cause every way that you slice the data, you're marginalizing some group. It's tough. It's a really, really hard job because everything has become dehumanized. Everything is down to a spreadsheet, right? And what we can say about, you know, these giant companies, like we normal people living normal lives, we wonder how S&P 500 company can do such, have company policies that are so egregiously bad for the environment, so awful to their employees, until a regulator steps in and forces them to do things differently, checks up on them, right? We wonder how it's possible. And, based on the neuroscience and based on simply my personal experience of not even having that long of a business career, but experiencing what we call business PTSD, it's very clear that, every single backstabbing, betrayal, exile event that happens in a business setting, which we sweep under the rug and say, oh, it's not personal, it's just business, right? It is personal. These are humans doing this to each other. This is your boss. This is your mentor. This is your colleague, your acquaintance. I mean, maybe it's not your best friend, but it's someone that you spent every day with, working next to them. And they just took your idea and took credit for it.
Yeah.
That hurts.
Yeah.
Right. But we just sweep it under the rug. We just sweep it under the rug. It's not personal. It's just business. It's not personal. It's just business. Right. Douchebag Brad got the promotion. So I got to be a douchebag like Brad. Right. And the reason why these CEOs of these Fortune 500 companies can enact these policies that do such bad things, and then when some activist group catches them doing it, they spend billions of dollars on a cover-up, right? It's because they have been traumatized to the point that they don't care anymore. It's undiagnosed, untreated PTSD from decades-long career experiencing severe, basically combat episodes in a business setting. This is what the neuroscience is showing, is that the amygdala doesn't know the difference between being betrayed by your colleague at the workplace and a combat episode being experienced by a soldier. The extreme fear, the extreme stress, short circuits your amygdala, and you need less than 10 of these to become completely bipolar.
So when you look at the world at large, how many people do you think are experiencing these hijacked amygdalas?
Everybody.
Everybody.
Even my amygdala gets hijacked sometimes. And I've done a lot of training. But the difference between when I was younger versus my experience of an amygdala hijack now is that I can recover from the amygdala hijack in a matter of seconds. And I used to be a little kid with some ADHD autistic rage. Like I really would be that little kid that would like lose at a video game and like be smacked, like punching his pillow, being like, oh my God, I can't believe I lost. Ah! Ridiculous to think about. It's absurd to think about that was me. But I have these memories of like throwing my video game controller at my TV and breaking it. Like just like blasting through the screen, And now I can, granted, I still get hijacked, right? But those episodes that used to last minutes, for me now last 10 to 15 seconds.
I've noticed that through the use of psychedelics in my life, I've gotten so much more zen when things go sideways. And I wonder if that's also related to something around the amygdala.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. It's entirely possible that it's around the amygdala. So like the brain, neuroplasticity doesn't just happen with respect to new neurons in these regions of the brain. There's also neuroplasticity of like new pathways, right? And I
pruning off the old pathways.
Yes, exactly. And that I think is the more relevant mechanism of action with these kind of immediate belief system shifts that come from psychedelics. It's the analogy that I like to use when talking about, or at least when educating people about their first psychedelic experience, is that the mind is an ocean of activity. And in the ocean, you have currents. And these currents allow water to move very, very quickly along the specific groove, right? And if anyone's seen the movie Finding Nemo, right? You hop in that current, you can get from one part of the ocean to another part of the ocean very quickly, right?
That's a great metaphor.
Right? And this is basically what happens in your subconscious mind, right? In the rational part of the mind, you're thinking things through, you're turning things over, you're analyzing it from different perspectives. It's this whole like geometric, thing happening. But in the subconscious, it's basically running entirely on currents. And what psychedelics do is it turns the entire ocean into a current. So you can go every direction. You can see connections between ideas that you never thought were connected. But all of these nodes exist in different memory spots in your brain, like literally like your nervous system. You know, what we learned from The Body Keeps the Score, Bessel van der Kolk, the book about PTSD, is that, you know, traumatic memories are not just stored in the brain. Joyful memories are not only stored, they're stored in the entire nervous system. You could have a PTSD memory from when you were 5 years old stored in your finger, in the nerves in your finger, right? And, you know, there's only some types of therapy where you can come into a calm state, put all of your mind's attention into your heart center, grab that energy ball, move it up into your shoulder, move it down into your elbow, move it into your pinky, feel that memory and try to unbundle it. Right? But this is not something that is even known to be possible in most of the Western cultural zeitgeist. But it is a thing that is known by hypnotherapists. It's a thing that is known by Qigong masters. It's a thing that is known by yoga masters. It's just not known in the Anglo-Saxon world, or rather the world that was created by the British Royal Empire, and the education system that was implemented by that British Royal Empire, where, you know, the intention was to turn every beautiful, unique snowflake human baby into a cog that could be taken from an accounting position in Bangalore and moved to Australia, and then moved to the colonies, and then moved to, you know, anywhere else that the sun never set on the British Empire. And so I think, yeah, so back to the psychedelics, it's like you can grow new neural pathways around your existing ones because your mind that only had, you know, 5 or 6 currents now has 100, 200 currents running through it, and you can travel them all. And as long as you pick one that's salient and you hold on to it, it will stay. And I think like something that you said the first time we hung out is that once you have that awakening, once you have that momentary realization when you're in the psychedelic state, like you come back sober and you can't forget it. What is going on there that you can't forget it? And it's a new neural path.
Yes.
Pathway.
Yeah, for me, that was probably my first DMT experience, was a moment of pure realization of unity, of God, of coming back home. Non-separation. And although you lose the experience when you come back to 3D reality, there's a part that stays.
Yeah.
And it's that knowledge. It's the knowing. You no longer have to believe or convince yourself that something is real. You've just seen it. You've experienced it tangibly.
You grokked it.
You've grokked it. I love that.
For the sci-fi lovers out there.
And I'm curious, what was the moment for you where you grokked it?
Oh, yeah. Okay. The very, very first time I took mushrooms, I had just turned 21. I was at my fraternity house in Boston, and the older guys were, you know, basically teaching us about how to safely do drugs. And you know, up until this point in my life, I was like super straight edge. You know, I was a good little Chinese tiger mom boy. You know, like, you know, didn't party, didn't do drugs, didn't hang out with bad kids.
Your mom raised you well.
Yeah. And here I was at MIT, you know, with all these kids that were just like, you know, this, like, I really thought when I was younger, I was super smart. I thought I was like, I'm the smartest kid in the world. I was actually just like the smartest kid in the Nevada school system, which is like the second worst school district in in the world, you know. And, you know, I got to this school and I was like, yo, there are like real magicians here. Like, it's like fucking Harry Potter out here. And I'm just like, I'm a muggle, you know, like I'm just like an averagely smart guy, like that barely made it in, you know, barely had enough SAT scores. Like I got in because I played football, you know.
Can I ask you a tangential question? What do you think is the difference between the super highly intelligent people that you think are like magicians with their brain versus the general population?
The general population?
Or just the average person?
Well, I don't want to pontificate on that because I don't want to be an elitist. But there is something that one of the philosophers said. Was it Camus? Was it maybe it was Nietzsche? But one of these existentialist guys, and They said that the difference between a person who questions and a person who doesn't is greater than the difference between a human and a chimpanzee cousin.
Wow. Okay.
And that is simply just like the question. Has nothing to do with the mental horsepower, has nothing to do with how many books you read, the opportunity. It's like, are you questioning things? Are you questioning your reality? Are you questioning your existence? Are you trying to find your place in the universe? Because, yeah, I think I think the question is what drives people. Like, you have this question that drives you. What would the world look like if 1 billion people were turned on and had that moment of beautiful, joyful non-separation that can be delivered by plant medicine? That's a question. It's a question that deserves an answer. And there's a lot of people that don't have any questions. Everything's been figured out. There's a beautiful book by Rousseau, the philosopher. It's a treatise on education, Amélie, and he says that education by the state will only teach your children how to become a good citizen. The education on how to become a good human is entirely up to you. Right? And unfortunately, I feel that many people leave that latter question, the education of how to be a good human, they just delegate that to whatever moral system their parents told them, and they got that moral system from whatever version of God that they were taught about. And so people aren't even asking, how can I be a good human?
So it's more of a question of curiosity.
Yes.
Rather than the horsepower, the mental horsepower.
Indeed.
But you're at MIT in that moment.
In that moment,
you're like looking at these other...
And I'm just like, fuck, these kids are way smarter than me. I'm sorry, am I allowed to curse? Yeah, okay. So I just like had to let go of that whole, I'm the smartest kid in the world, the like identity, because like these kids were just like, like I would say the difference between me and the smartest kid at MIT is like, I'm a Motorola Razr and they are an iPhone 15. Right? It's that dramatic. And yeah, so I'm taking these mushrooms, but I'm trusting them because like I know my only asset in my life is my brain. And the fear around drugs is losing your mind.
Yes.
Right? And I think that I wasn't even aware that people partied so irresponsibly until I left university and started hanging out with people from other places that just had such, I don't know, like hidden on-ramps into the world of drugs. Hidden meaning like, they didn't have anyone to show them the way. They didn't have anyone to tell them how to be safe. They didn't have anyone to show them like, this is how you tell if these are actually real versus if they're not real. This is how you test it so that you know what you're taking, what you're putting in your body. You're not just trusting the word of this drug dealer and the drug dealer is just trusting the word of his drug dealer. And it's like, that person's literally putting poison into you and you're having a psychotic episode because you just took poison. Right. And, yeah. So anyway, it was, I was very, very thankful because like the guy that, he was like a double degree in biomedical engineering and nuclear engineering at MIT. He's like the fucking smartest guy in the world, and his only asset is his brain. So he did the research and checked out like, what is the mechanism of action here? What's going on? Like, what's it going to do to you? What to expect? And, we really, like, I just felt safe, right? And so in that safe container, I managed to have the most beautiful first time mushroom experience where like I remember there was this playground nearby our fraternity house on the Esplanade on Beacon Street. And we went to this playground and there were a bunch of college kids like climbing around on this playground in the middle of the night, on some random weekend. Or not random, it was spring break. It was the first weekend of spring break. And it was so loopy. And I was just like, whoa, this is crazy. Like, what's going on here? Oh my God, haha, everything's so funny. Yay, oh yeah. And like, I thought that was great. But then I felt this urge to like separate myself from the group for a little bit. And I went and sat on this hammock thing. And I was swinging in this hammock and I was just got very introspective. And I was kind of like looking up at the view and there were some buildings, there were some trees. And I remember asking the question, I was like, what am I going to do with this summer, because I hadn't secured a summer internship yet. And by this time, most of the kids had secured their summer internships. And again, I was the Motorola Razr, right? So I was like, kind of feeling some insecurity. And that kind of like, what am I going to do this summer turned into like, oh God, what am I going to do with my life?
And existential questions start coming.
Because you spend so much time as a teenager, and this is my first, like I just turned 21. Yeah. And I was like, man, I'm a full year into being an adult, quotes, right? What am I going to do with my life? And this tree full on just like it turns like colorful and like Pocahontas colors of the wind style, and just like turns around, and it's like, oh darling, don't worry about it. Just keep working hard and everything will be lovely. And it was like a British woman, like a middle-aged British woman. And I was like, just keep working hard? Really? That's it? Yeah.
I love it.
And she was like, yeah. It's like, whatever happens, just work hard to solve it. And I can't do the British accent for a long time, but like full on, like this was a British woman, right? Proper Queen's English type, And then
I didn't know trees had accents.
Dude, me neither. Okay. Me neither. And then the conversation evolved, and I was like, well, what am I supposed to do in this scenario? And then the tree right next to her colorized and like turned around and was like, oh, Charles, no, don't worry. Just keep smiling. Good things happen to pretty people. Just exercise, maintain your figure, and I'm just like, this was like the vain one, right? And then the conversation evolved, and then the next one turned around. It's like, oh, you're never going to amount to anything. Look at you. You're on drugs in the park right now. You fucking worthless piece of shit, just like, and she's like the mean old grandmother, right? And then the conversation evolved, and then the tree next to her turned around and was just like, oh, just be nice. Just be nice to everyone you meet, and good things happen to nice people. Right? It's karma, right? It's like if you're nice, good things happen to you. Not in like the spiritual karmic sense, but in just like in this moment. If you're nice to this person right now, the next time they see you, they'll remember how nice you were, and they'll do something nice for you. And at that point, I was just like, me with these 4 trees, all of them female and British, various ages. Right, we got like the practical like mother-aged one. We've got the young slut, right? We've got the old bitchy grandmother, just like the prude, right? And then we've got the really, really nice like fairy godmother energy.
Oh my God.
And I'm just like holding quorum, I'm just like asking them every question that I can possibly think about my life, and, hearing all their different perspectives, and, having them, watching them argue with each other. And like this lasted for like ever, until one of my friends came over and was like, hey, Charles, we're going to go back to the house now. And I was like, yeah. Hold on. Let me just finish this conversation. And they're like, you're not talking to anyone. And I'm just like, what? And they're like, you're not talking to anyone. I was like, yeah, I'm talking. I got this whole thing going. And I turned back, and the trees were all back to their normal selves, like completely. There's no colors. The wind was blowing a little bit, right? And I was just like,
wow, so trippy.
Whoa, did that happen? What?
It'd be fun if you went back to the exact same spot.
Oh, I saved a pin. And I went back to that spot many times before I graduated.
Oh, nice.
Sat there. And the thing is, so the rest of that night was like, super loopy, and we continued to have hilarious experiences. Nothing quite so introspective, but I went back to that spot the next day when I was sober, and I sat in that exact spot, and I looked at exactly those trees, trying to figure out like, what happened? Because it was so intense, so real. But of course, completely in my head. And I came to the deduction that these were, at the time, the 4 major pillars of my personality. That at the time,
being extrapolated, projected into the 3D space for you to interact with.
Exactly.
Oh, I love that.
And that externalization was, I think, so powerful for me to be able to not just see my ego,
Yeah.
but to see the different alter egos
Yeah.
that would every once in a while take over.
Yes.
And, basically like that I think that movie Inside Out by Disney Pixar hit it right on the head. Like when I watched that movie, I was like, the director of this movie had the same trip. Had the exact same trip.
I remember the same thing when I watched Soul by
Yes.
also Disney
Oh,
Pixar. I'm like,
yes.
whoever did Soul, they definitely smoked DMT, because
Oh
there's
my
some
gosh.
death scenes in that movie that are like the afterlife and the way it's shown, the frequency, the vibration.
And I think, the psychedelic community online, on various blogs, like Shroomery or like Arrowid, or these kinds of kind of deep web, not dark web, but like deep web kind of message boards and forums. When people describe their experiences on certain species of mushrooms and certain dosages, and like even like there's people that someone was telling me at Burning Man that like there's a whole community of people online that have like they're like doing DMT 100 times, 200 times, 300 times, like documenting their experiences. And I'm just like, dude, you guys are going a little too far. But the point is that there is this pattern, right? There are these similar trips that are happening for people. And I don't think it's
Plugged into the universal intelligence, right?
Exactly.
So you're getting
the
downloads.
the collective unconscious.
Yes.
Yeah, whether it's the collective unconscious or it is, like a reproducible dance of these molecules within the body. Who's to say what, right? All I know is that was the first time that I was able to truly see myself outside of myself and dissect the different alter egos. And it was after that point, or maybe it was after my second mushroom trip, when I had like a similarly intense ego experience, not ego death, but ego confrontation, that I thought about this idea that is now your mission.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, man, people do such bad things to other people, most likely because they don't realize what they're doing is going to hurt other people. This was like my thing. It's like, most people are just kind of selfish. They just do things that's in their own best interests. And they're not like, destructively selfish. They're not neurotically selfish. They're just normal selfish. It's like, I'm going to do what's best for me.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you're in like a romantic relationship and there's like, us becomes you and me, right? I'm not going to do what's good for us. I'm going to do what's good for me, right? That is the opposite of non-separation. Anytime you make the choice with someone that you love to do something that is best for me, you are breaking the magic of that infinity that you created in that moment of love, in the previous moment of love, right? And I think that, unfortunately, this kind of like cultural zeitgeist around boundaries and desires, and it's preventing the joy of non-separation. People say like, I don't want to lose myself in a relationship. It's like, why would you want to keep yourself? Like, are you doing such a good job on your own? If you were, why are you in a relationship at all?
Interesting. So the idea of boundaries doesn't resonate with you.
I think the idea of boundaries is how you end up alone. You have too many boundaries and no one's going to want to play with you. It's like a kid in the sandbox. You draw too many lines around yourself, right? There's just lines in the sand. But
there is an aspect of boundaries I find really useful, in that you set a certain standard for how you want to be treated. And if other people overstep that boundary,
yes,
you have to have strong vision for how you would like to interact with people.
I see that as the platform on which your ego stands.
Okay.
Not as the wall that you build around your ego. Right? So you're not keeping people out. Like, I wouldn't call that a boundary. I would say, like, I want to interact with people that have built themselves up to this similar level that I'm on. Right? So there's this and it's not my idea. There's this philosopher, his name is Lacan. He kind of showed up right at the end of the existentialist period and kind of like wrapped it all up. And he had a couple of main ideas that I really hold in my life. One of them was that the term ego had gone from a strictly technical term used by psychologists and psychoanalysts at the time to describe knowledge of the sense of self. It's strictly definitional. It's like the ego is the knowledge of your sense of self, right? And the way that people had been using it in the colloquial terms, which is how people are still using it in the colloquial terms, oh, he's got such a big ego, is they're actually talking about conceit. When you're conceited about your ego, it becomes very toxic, right? It becomes very destructive, very oppressive to people around you. And no one likes to be around a conceited person. But we use the vocabulary incorrectly. It's like, oh, he's such a big ego. It's so egotistical, right? That's what the correct term is, egotistical, right? Not ego. Ego is how you understand yourself in relation to others, right? It is not separation. It is utility. It's function. It's like, how do I function in this world filled with so many other egos, right? And if you don't know anything about your ego, you're lost. You're not useful to anyone. What do? I don't know. What do? I'm on a mission to help 1 billion people understand the value and magic of plant medicine. That's ego. It's a good thing. It's a positive thing. So that's Lacan's first point. It's like, first, let's recapture the term and use it correctly so that it can be a positive thing, right? Those other things you're talking about, that's conceitedness. That's egotistical. The second big idea was that he talks about people that live most of their lives in the mirror phase. The mirror phase is when you have not done the work to build up your ego. You've not done the work to understand your ego. And so you can only see in other people shadows of your own ego. Right? And this is the origin of the idea, again, the colloquial misuse of the term when people say like, oh, you can only be a mirror for someone else. Mirror, mirror, mirror. They're not using it correctly, because what's actually happening is you weaponizing the term mirror indicates that you can only see the aspect of yourself that you hate in me. Right? And that is the term that people understand, is that like when you hate someone, when you're really triggered by someone, it's because they have some quality that you despise in yourself. And if you had actually advanced to the point of self-integration, you would see that and have compassion. You'd be like, oh, I used to be like that. Good luck.
Mm-hmm. So it's a level of awareness that you gain through your own inner work, understanding your own ego.
Yeah. And that's why I call it like building up, right? Everyone begins on the floor, but by working with your ego, understanding your ego, integrating your shadows, right? You build yourself a little stage, right? And then that stage gets a little bit bigger, and then that stage gets a little bit taller. Maybe you expand the dimensions of the stage in the X, Y, and then you expand the dimensions of the stage in the Z direction, or in the Z coordinate, right? And then maybe like you put something on the stage. You put some like what do they call it in theater? Not decorations, but props, right? Yeah, like, and it's like, this is my ego. Look at all these nice stuff that I made, And when you have this, well-formed knowledge of your ego, and you've been able to integrate these various aspects of your shadow, other people's problems don't bother you, right? And this is what's beyond the mirror phase, right? Where you actually built yourself high enough that you can see and respect another person's ego, right? And it's from that place of mutual respect. Like, I know myself, you know yourself. Let's have a conversation about ourselves. I want to learn about yourself, and you want to learn about myself. And, I know enough about myself to share, right? But if you don't know enough about yourself, you're stuck in the mirror phase. All you can do is talk about the aspect of you that's in them.
Right.
Right. And so this is from the philosopher Lacan. And so when you talk about, like as you described, the level of treatment that you expect from another human, that's what I think of as the kind of the Z coordinate of building the stage of your ego. But I think boundaries are like the Great Wall of China is a boundary, right? This is the fence. Keep your dog out of my yard, right?
I love that metaphor.
Yeah.
So build the platform, not the walls.
Build the platform, not the walls.
Yeah.
Right. Invite people. Right. I mean, like, I'm not going to lie. Right. One of the fantasies I had when I was writing my book was that if I tell people who I am, if I tell people what I care about, someone might see it and care so much about what I care about that they'll find me, and we can, either be friends, become, lovers, right? Become whatever. And sure enough, that's what happened, right? Like, I met the love of my life this year. We got married, and it's been a beautiful time. I mean, not I mean, we both are, we're still dealing with a normal relationship. We're not two enlightened beings, but she's an author. I'm an author. I love what her book is about. She loves what my book is about. And there's this kind of mutual mental masturbation that's happening. But because we're two egos that have a very well-defined sense of self, and I like to think that neither of us are conceited about it, but sometimes we get in arguments.
Tell me how you first met your wife.
Oh my gosh, the timeline collapsed, man. It was I was on my way to Burning Man, and I was hired to be the meditation coordinator for one of the sound camps out there called the Buddha Lounge. And the reason that I was hired for that, I mean, hired is a strong word when you're talking about Burning Man, because the culture is so much about giving and so much of it. But I was invited to be the meditation coordinator. And so I taught a workshop every day that I call Sonic Acupuncture, which is the guided meditation album that we produced for the exercises that are described in the book, these specific neuroplastic workouts that, if you induce a flow state and you train your mind on these precepts, you can stimulate blood to flow in these specific regions of the brain that, when they're dysfunctional, they cause anxiety, depression, PTSD, and addiction. And so that's why I was going to Burning Man. I had never gone before. It was a completely new experience. And, the people that knew what they were doing, they all said, you got to stop at this Walmart in Reno. It's the last stop before you get out there into the middle of the desert. And this is where everybody gets their supplies. And so we're at this Walmart in Reno. I'm with my, I'm with my group. There's like 4 of us that are driving up in a car. And it's just been driving for 12 hours. Haven't showered. Not cute. I'm in this aisle, the peanut butter aisle.
I love how you remember that.
Dude. Because it was shocking because all the crunchy peanut butter was gone. All of it.
And that's what you were looking forward to.
Because I don't eat creamy peanut butter. It's not a thing.
You were hoping to stock up on crunchy peanut butter.
Yeah, because it's non-perishable. It's got all the proteins, all the oils. It's just the perfect. Peanut butter is the perfect food for Burning Man. and there was no crunchy peanut butter, and so I was looking, if I could find anything, that I wanted to eat, and the aisle was empty. And then this girl walks into the aisle, and she's got the braids in her hair like all the Burning Man girls do, and she's just stunning, and I'm just quietly backing out of the aisle and walking away. I'm just there's no way I'm not cute right now. I'm tired. There's no way I could say anything charming. It's these fluorescent lights, what are you gonna say? Hey baby, you going to Burning Man? So no, I was oh, great, nothing to see here. And I'm in the next aisle, and she shows up again, and we're making eye contact. It's not like she just walked up and then we, and then I left. It's she walked into the aisle. We had an intense eye contact at either side of the aisle, and then left, right? And then in the next aisle, intense eye contact, left, right? Intense eye contact, left.
I know those moments. It's you see someone and there's an energetic exchange going on.
Yeah. It's that James Blunt song. It's I saw your face in a crowded place, and I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
You're beautiful. Right? And, I was just oh, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I don't need to hit on this girl in Walmart. It's fine. All right. And
stay on the mission.
I gotta get this. I got this shopping list. Everything is bought out. We're gonna starve at Burning Man. It's crazy, and but it's just 5, 6, 7 aisles, right? So then eventually, our shopping carts are next to each other in the middle of this aisle, and it's uncomfortable because we both know that we both are looking at each other, and it's like we're shopping off of the same list that we found on the internet or something. And it's okay, I got to talk to her. And I'm about to talk to her, and then my phone rings, and it's the guy that I was buying a bike from off of Craigslist. He's in the parking lot. And I'm just great, pressure's off. I run out of there. I go, I try this bike out, and I buy it. Go back inside, she's not there. I'm like, okay, phew. Don't have to worry about that one, you know, like making a fool of myself.
Was there a part of you that kind of wished she was still there?
Of course. Yeah. I went inside thinking, I wonder if she's going to be still in Walmart. I wonder if she's just going to be like in the front while I walk in. And she wasn't, and it was fine. And, you know, we did the first day of Burning Man. Everyone got on their bikes, and I get on my bike, and I'm like super proud of myself for buying this bike like just before getting in, and like it's super cheap on Craigslist, and the back tire's busted. I'm just like, how's that possible? Like I tested it in the parking lot, it was fine, but you know, act of some magical forces, or just, you know, I just got scammed, whatever. But beautiful thing about Burning Man, there's bike shops. Oh. There are some camps that are like mechanics, and they just set up bike shops, you know, in every little neighborhood. So I'm like, okay, in the morning I'll get my bike fixed, and I just stayed in the neighborhood, had myself a nice little night. And most of the people in my camp had gone somewhere else. Night 2 comes along. I spent that day getting my bike fixed. It was great. They explained to me why the bike broke. Not relevant for the podcast. And my friend's saying like, oh, we're gonna go to Playa Alchemist. My friend is DJing. And I was like, great. And so we're riding our bikes across the playa. We're at like 2:30 in F, and Playa Alchemist is like 9:30 in A. I think that's how it works. No, 9:30 in the Esplanade, basically. And but so like from 2:30 to 9 is completely across. And Playa Alchemist is like this big pyramid. It's like absurdly tall. You know, like the amount of, like the size of the architecture of some of these camps out there, it was like, it's staggering. You know, it was like my first time, I was very much impressed. We get into this giant pyramid, and like the base is rocking, and I'm just like, wow, this is the party. This is, well, I don't know about the party, but it was definitely a party, and it was lit. All right. And I see this, we're in the crowd, I'm dancing, I see this beautiful girl. Like, I'm just like, oh, look at that. You know, but she's in full costume. You know, it's not like, there's no connection in my mind, right? And you know, like we make eye contact, and I'm just like, okay, dancing. We make eye contact again. It's like, all right, I got to look for an in. We make eye contact a third time, and she like smiles and waves, and it's like time stopped, and I'm just like,
that's the in.
That's the in, right? So I talked to my friend. I was like, guys, I'll see you tomorrow. Like I know. Like that kind of intro, there's no way that I'm going to hang out with you guys the rest of the night unless you come with us, you know? And so I like make my way through the crowd. I get up to her and I start talking. It's like, hey, how's it going? Like, what's up? Like, is this your first Burning Man? Like, I don't know what I said, but the first thing she says is, do you not recognize me from Walmart? And I'm my brain just exploded. I'm just like, no fucking way, no, Walmart girl. And I see her, and like I'm like, because she's got like this like full costume, like got this outfit and got this thing on her head, and I'm just like, wow, no way, I wanted to talk to you. And she's like, you didn't want to talk to me, like you were so rude. And I was like, what do you mean rude? I didn't do anything rude, I just didn't talk to you. She was like, that was rude. That was rude to not talk to me. And it was probably like 10 minutes into the conversation, we kissed, and we were dancing, and we just never stopped kissing. And like we just spent the rest of Burning Man together. And then the rain came.
This was 2023.
This is this year.
Oh, yeah, wow.
The rain happened. And the day after the rain stopped, the day of the man burn, we got married.
Wow.
There's a lot that happened in between, but
I bet.
Yeah, no, we had a beautiful, beautiful playa wedding.
Wow.
On the wing of a 747 that was converted into an art car. Huge, like, honestly, surprising production value. Like if you tried to have this wedding not at Burning Man, it would cost you $1 million. Like we had this like world famous pianist that was like live playing, like as people were giving their speeches. Like my friend that I came to Burning Man with, he was my best man, of course. And like her friend that she came to Burning Man with was her maid of honor. And we had this like proper priestess, you know, who had, so she was a documentary film producer, and not my wife, the priestess, and the whole thing was filmed like this proper like documentary crew. And like the documentary that they were filming, they were hired by this tech billionaire, Brock Pierce, to make this film about the unseen heart of Burning Man. That Burning Man had gotten such a rap about, being this just like, oh, there's a bunch of hippies doing drugs in the desert, and it's just partying and like drunks and like socialites posting on Instagram, but in actuality, there's so much beautiful art, right? And it is the largest gathering of artists, spiritual healers, seekers, and socialites and hippies doing drugs in the desert. But people focus on these two categories, the latter two categories, and forget about the first three, that it's art, it's music, it's spiritual healing. And so the priestess and her documentary film crew, they had filmed one of my workshops because we had been introduced somehow through the Playa Magic. That's what it's called. It's not my word. And yeah, so they filmed my workshop as I was talking about, like, the power of specific frequencies to induce particular brainwave patterns and flow states, the power of certain musical keys to induce certain emotional states. Like every musical key has an emotional quality to it. And that's why nursery rhymes are all in D major. That's why uplifting pop songs are all in G major. That's why like sad love songs are always in A minor. It's a thing. It's math, right? And so like taking the math of the musical key with the power of these specific frequencies to induce flow states, with the drums that we programmed in to guide the specific pranayama breathing pattern, with the lyrics that were the mantra that you're supposed to recite in your head over and over again. I had, a dozen or two people at every one of my workshops, and I was tracking how many people came and how many people full on cried, like deep traumatic emotional release from one session with no training. And 32%, it's amazing numbers. And I had these people, they were coming up afterwards, they're saying like, yo man, I've been doing breathwork for years and never had this experience. Like what's different? I don't know. Like I've been doing sound healing I love sound healing, I do it every weekend, but like I never had this body shaking convulsions. What did you do? I was like, I didn't do it. You're the one that was breathing.
Do you think it's the frequencies in
it's
the music?
Combination.
Mm-hmm.
It's the combination. And this is, the majority of my work and my focus for this next chapter of my life is that music has been reduced to entertainment.
Yeah.
Because music feels good. We know that it feels good, but that is just the most naive interpretation of the experience that we have in the presence of frequency and vibration, literally vibration. I mean, we talk about like, oh, this guy's such a good vibe. Oh, like she's got such a good vibration, but like, no, literally there is something here where music properly delivered can be medicine.
100%.
Right?
I mean, you feel it on psychedelic trips so much, the sensitivity to sound and frequency. And if you ever hear like an ad from YouTube, oh my God, it's the worst. Right?
Amygdala hijack.
It's like, what the hell is this? But in our 3D day-to-day life, we kind of tune it out. We leave the TV in the background. Mm-hmm. We do all these things that on mushrooms and other plant medicines, you realize everything is frequency, and everything that is entering your matrix of energy, you have to pay attention to it. Mm-hmm. Every sound, every word, every song you play on Spotify, it has meaning. It has an effect on you. Absolutely.
Absolutely. There's a time in my life, I was actually on mushrooms and we were listening to music, and I had this thought about lyrics in songs. I was like, what if all these cheesy pop songs that are just so easily disregarded, like Miley Cyrus, Wrecking Ball, as an example, right?
Or their mantras, right?
Yeah. What if it was for real? I came in like a wrecking ball. I never tried so hard at love. Like, dude, if you ever had a heartbreak, you ever had a breakup with someone that you were still in love with, and it didn't work out because of distance or timing or family or like whatever reason that didn't have to do with you two deciding that you didn't want it, like that hits. you know, and like that at the time was just about the lyrics. But now that I know so much about the way that ancient cultures used sound in community settings, the Gnostic Christians like that had these massive, the first ones to build the massive cathedrals that were acoustically so advanced, that had these organs, right? You would walk in for the Sunday proceeding and the person is playing these specific chord progressions over and over. You know, it's like over and over again. It's like,
It's tuning you.
yeah, you think we're at a rave, dude? Like, no, this is medicine, all right? This gets you in, it induces a specific flow state, and they've been experimenting with it for thousands of years, right? And it's not just the Christians with the organ, or with the giant pianos. It's the sound bowls, the sound healing. Everybody in Bali loves a good sound healing, right? The size of these bowls was experimented with over thousands of years. If the bowl's too small in diameter, it doesn't quite hit. If the bowl's too big in diameter, it doesn't quite hit. When you get two bowls that are improperly matched, it doesn't induce the right effect, right? So that's why it's not just about playing the bowl, it's about knowing the order to play the bowl and when to play certain bowls together, right? This is what creates the magical experience of a sound healing. Same thing with the Chinese gongs. Like these gongs, the diameter of the gongs were experimented with over thousands of years, so that when you entered into the temple, right, the vibration reflects off of the walls, gets into your bones, and everybody in the room is in a flow state. And, you know, like certain people talk about, you know, alpha, theta, gamma, like all these different brain waves. Most people are kind of using the terminology incorrectly, but it is related. It is related. And there is not just an entertainment value to it. So I think that, you know, properly applied, you can cure more with sound therapy than with years of talk therapy. Properly applied.
I believe it.
Yeah, I'm not saying go to your local sound healing session and expect to be cured of your PTSD, because you actually need someone that understands the depth, that understands how deep this magic goes. I think music is the original magic.
It is.
Right.
It's the language beyond all languages that everyone immediately understands. And I feel like we have been so hijacked with music in the modern society. You know, you go to every cafe, they're playing the pop songs, and it's like without permission, you're being downloaded these mantras into your head, these lyrics, these catchy tunes, instead of properly using music in a ceremonial setting, in an intentional way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But everywhere you go now, people are blasting music.
Yep.
And yeah, I don't know what the solution is there other than people gaining awareness of using sound intentionally. Listen to the pop songs, but don't subject the whole neighborhood to it without consent.
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 What a topic.
Is that a loaded word for you?
What a top. Well, no, I mean, just consent with respect to sound is a loaded word for me, because, you know, I actually just got hit with an Instagram ad recently about basically targeting ADHD people, of which, you know, I was diagnosed with ADHD as a kid, and it's been something that, you know, part of the reason why I was so dedicated to the meditation practice was the brain parts that are dysfunctional in ADHD and autistic people can be targeted and modulated through meditation practice. Through this, you know, the practices, the neuroplastic workouts that we describe in the book. And I've seen a dramatic effect in my life, but, you know, to the point that, you know, my ADHD doesn't really flare up that much anymore. And if it does, then I do this breathing sequence. I stimulate blood flow to that region, and I'm good, right? But I got targeted for this ad that is like earplugs for people with ADHD. And the explanation was so incredible. I was like, I hadn't heard of this before. But it was, so I had used in the past, you know, going to electronic music festivals, they have these earplugs that are low pass filter earplugs. So they cut the bass frequencies by like 10 decibels or something like that. So you can hear all the music, and you can actually hear people speaking next to you. You don't have to shout, right? It's a beautiful thing. And they're very discreet, right? So you just put in these earplugs. You can get as close as you want to the big speakers, and you're not going to blow your eardrums out, right? So I had used those before. But these ADHD earplugs, they do the same thing for the mid-range frequencies. And I was like, no way this works. So I actually read the science. I like did my own external research, not the stuff that they were talking about on the website, which was all sales and marketing copy. But like there is very strong research suggesting that the part of the brain that processes these mid-range frequencies is differently shaped. I don't want to say dysfunctional, but it's like differently shaped. And so autistic and ADHD people are more sensitive to slamming of doors, to the clapping of hands, to the shrieking of babies than other people are.
That's so interesting. And it makes sense why you're then so distracted or so affected by those noises.
Yeah, because you have these sounds that are just happening in the environment, and everybody else is able to just be like going about their day.
Yeah.
But here I am just like, fuck, did you really need to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And in kids that don't know how to self-soothe, like ADHD kids, that's why they have such tantrums. Right. And so, this thing about sound and consent is really comes down to, I don't know if it's consent so much as sovereignty. Mm. There's like active noise canceling headphones were game changers for me. I had my first noise canceling pair of headphones when I was just out of college, and that's what enabled my life as a digital nomad. Like I just couldn't I had my first job out of college, never had used a noise canceling headphone. Was in a big office environment. Didn't really need it, right? Because everyone's like a library. But even then, I would use earplugs. Like all through college, I used earplugs when I was working just to not get distracted. But when noise canceling headphones came out, I was like, oh, this is great.
Sovereignty. Yeah. Because you can't expect people to be aware of your sensitivities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think, there is, it's a continuous discussion of consent, sovereignty. Like what can you do to protect yourself versus what is another person's responsibility to be sensitive to? It's like, it's a tough question. I mean, when it comes to like one's physical safety, it's pretty well defined. But when we're talking about, visual consent, auditory consent, it's like these, sound waves travel around corners. Light does too, right? So it's like, what are you going to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, it's more just noticing how people are not aware how music affects them so much, and they're blasting music without thinking about it.
And if people were aware, I feel like there'd be a lot less neurotic reaction, right? Because there's this movie. I saw it on an airplane once, but it was about this guy who was like this scientist. He was a healer that worked in New York City, and he would go to people's houses and take sound measurements by the window, when you turn on the shower, the root note of the coffee maker, and he would create these like sonic profiles of a person's home and say like, this thing is a G, that thing is a B flat, this thing is an A, this thing, and you have these like, basically you're living in an environment of constant discord, and that's why you're behaving like a crazy person.
Oh, wow.
And I thought like the movie was so believable, and I thought it was based on a true story, but it's not. It's not. And, but the whole movie was about how this guy was an independent scientist and had like collected all this research, but he was being rejected by the scientific community at large, who did not want to accept his ideas that ambient sound does have the ability to increase cortisol levels at a resting rate, and or increase the release of oxytocin at a resting rate. And so it turns out there's not that much actual science about this. I looked after I watched the movie, but I think there's something to it. I really do. And especially this experience that we've had. I mean, now we've performed sonic acupuncture for over 1,000 people, and 32% of people with no training
Is this an audio that they can find online?
Yeah, it's
from
on
you?
SoundCloud. Yeah,
Beautiful. So we'll
yeah,
link to that in the show notes.
absolutely. Yeah, and we will release it on Spotify, but right now the first 2 tracks are available on SoundCloud. The one that we produced with Snoop Dogg, and the one that is the basic track of the 8 Pillars of Joy, and we call it Never Skip Joy Day.
Okay, so you got to talk to me about Snoop Dogg.
Yeah,
How
Snoop
did he
Dogg.
get involved?
Yeah. Well, so Snoop Dogg is super into meditation, and people don't realize that. But he did a whole meditation thing with Martha Stewart, and we got in touch with his team, and we basically. It wasn't like a collaboration in the sense of like I was in the studio with Snoop Dogg and we're boys. It's not like that. But we are. He's involved with the project, and he had a guided meditation track, and we bought the rights to it, and we reworked it so that it's not because the guided meditation, it was just like his voice spoken for I think like a minute 30 seconds. And so we took that voice sample and added the frequencies that I mentioned. We added the frequencies, we added a specific musical key that would induce a joyous, relaxed state. And that is the first track on the official book soundtrack. And when it's ready to go, I mean, because we've been performing at Burning Man, we did this like the Portugal Burn, we did this music festival in Australia, a couple others, but they weren't like, we were experimenting. Like I wasn't sure if this was the direction. I only started making music. I've been a musician since I was a kid. I played the violin at an extremely high level of Chinese tiger mom induction, but music was not really part of my life story since I was 15, and it wasn't until a mentor kind of pushed me in this direction to like not only awaken my creative side, but he said to me, you might have the most important message in the universe, but if it doesn't slap, nobody's listening.
If it doesn't slap, no one's listening.
If it doesn't slap, and I looked at it, I was like, it's a book. How am I going to make a book slap? And he takes off his sunglasses and he looks at me. He said, well, you don't think you can make a book slap? And I was like, no, dude, the books don't slap. Books are books. People read books in like quiet environments. He's like, you ever picked up a Bible? Every page of the Bible slaps. These stories move people, right? The Quran, the Torah, the Tao Te Ching, right? The Bhagavad Gita, right? These stories move people.
Yeah.
And if your book doesn't do that, I'm not going to read it. Is what he said to me.
What a great mentor.
And he's a super mentor, and he's just like, and that's when I started. That's after I submitted the first manuscript to the editor, and I then had to do like, they told me it was too long, and so I had to cut out a bunch of the science jargon, and I had these words in my head. He's like, oh, make it slap, make it slap, make it slap. And then I recalled in my early journey, like being on psychedelics and listening to beautiful music. And then when I got into my yoga practice of, first, I did kind of the standard, like, Bikram, Vinyasa, Hatha, like whatever yoga, just, sampling all the different yogas. But then when I went to my first Kundalini yoga class, which is entirely focused on the breathing and the meditation side of yoga, which I mentioned earlier, this bhavana is like Savara, the science of breath, with mantra, the word of protection. These Kundalini yoga classes completely blew my mind open. And the prescription of this is like you do like a couple of poses to like loosen up the body, right? And this is when I learned that asana, right, the poses of yoga, the purpose is not to actually do a handstand. The people that are doing handstands in yoga are just wasting their time showing off, right? The purpose of asana is to make the body flexible enough so that you can sit in meditation for as long as it takes to achieve nirvana. This is the structure of the science, the old Indian science of the soul, right? A reproducible method by which to obtain lasting peace and superhuman compassion, right? And the lasting bit didn't really show up until Buddha, right? I mean, according to yoga cosmology, right? Like 60,000 years ago, Shiva taught the people yoga. And for 60,000 years, people have been exploring and achieving what they call the jhanas, Jhana. The jhanas are these heightened psychic states. There's level 1, the jhana of pleasant sensations, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, And at each one of these states, the experience of joy, non-separation, timelessness. Here, actually, I'm just going to read them through because it's worth discussing. It's worth discussing.
And I would love to also get into your November 2015, I believe, experience that really shifted.
That was my first jhana. That was my first jhana, right? So the first 8 levels of jhana that Shiva told the people about: delightful sensations, joy, contentment, utter peacefulness. Then level 5 is the infinity of space. Level 6 is the infinity of consciousness. Level 7 is the no thingness. Like not nothingness, but there's just no more things. Like this is what we call complete non-separation. And then after the no things, there's not even perception or non-perception. Imagine that. That's what the yogis call the samadhi. Samadhi is like, I'm not even I anymore. The thing that is perceiving is not even separate from the thing that is being perceived.
Yeah, full unity. Yeah.
What, like to the point that you're not even perceiving that it is unity.
It kind of reminds me of a breakthrough DMT dose where I was perceiving visuals, but also realizing that I was the visuals.
Boom.
It was not like watching a movie screen.
Boom.
It was energy perceiving itself.
Boom. There you go. There you go. And the thing is, by the time of this November 2015 experience, just like on a Wednesday, random Kundalini yoga studio in Chicago.
Yeah, set the stage for us.
Yeah, dude, it was just like
You had no idea what was going to happen.
No idea. Like I had been flirting with this Kundalini yoga thing, and I had been at the end of my first Kundalini class, which is like basically a series of breathing exercises. I was shocked that I felt high, like from smoking weed, right? Like I was completely straight edge all through high school, like Chinese tiger mom. When I got to college, I smoked weed for the first time. And, since the first day that I smoked weed every single day. All right. Cause it was just like, it helped with my ADHD. It was better than Adderall. And for me, right. Like everybody's brain works differently. Everybody has their own stuff. Right. But for me, it allowed me to it allowed me to dramatically reduce my amygdala hijacks. Like it allowed me to just be chill, right? But I didn't sacrifice productivity. Of course, I graduated. I started my first company. We raised venture capital money. Like we had great customers. Like we did great, right?
Which is kind of rare that it didn't sacrifice your productivity, because for me, it relaxes me as well. But absolutely, I sacrifice productivity. So it's fascinating how your brain works.
For me, it was, like a lot of people experience social anxiety on marijuana. I'm the opposite. When I'm in large crowds of people, like a networking event, like the event that we met at, I would historically be just like, I don't know what to say. Like everybody's got like a hypersensitive person, but like if I smoked a joint before going into one of those things, then I could chill. I could settle in, I could find a conversation, vibe with it, right? And so like it allowed me, like
unlocks a certain...
No, it just muted.
Oh, muted.
Yeah, it muted my anxiety to the point that I could actually function.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and that basically continued until this year. Like this, there was just like an energetic move that I did with a Qigong master out here in Bali, and I haven't even thought about weed since. It's crazy, like how much this thing was like a part of my life every day. Not to the point that I was addicted. I mean, you could say that I was addicted because I did it every day, but I didn't feel like I needed to like I wasn't like scratching my neck if I wasn't smoking weed. It was just like, a thing that I enjoyed doing, and I made sure I was always able to do it, and it didn't sacrifice my life. But now I don't even think about it.
Yeah.
I don't even think about it. But we were going back to,
the November
2015. Yes. So on this particular day, It was the end of a work day. I hadn't yet smoked a joint that day, right? It was like the class was 7 to 8:30 p.m. Objectively, hour and a half. I get in there just expecting to like, have myself a little high, like get myself a little like relaxation, like I'm learning how to meditate, like this is great. But there was just this one moment, maybe like 15, 20 minutes in. I actually have no idea how long it was in, but it was like maybe like 2 or 3 sequences. And the way we do these breathing exercises, like you do a sequence of a particular breath pattern, and then you hold at the bottom. They call this a kumbhaka, right? And the kumbhaka, and when you hold your breath, you engage the root lock, the Uddiyana Bandha, which is like the belly button lock, the Jalandhara bar, which is the throat lock. You hold these 3 locks, like you do all this breathing, and you completely exhale, and you hold. And you hold for as long as you can. And the yogis call this playing with the air hunger. Right? What playing with the air hunger means in normal language is you simulate the experience of suffocating.
Sounds delightful.
It is delightful because in the neuroscience term we'll talk about is that this is enables the subtle secretion of DMT.
Okay.
Right? And so, but what it does on a spiritual level is it teaches you that on a like in the grokking sense, like when you take that big inhale afterwards, then you do those 3 locks again. The Uddiyana Bandha, the Mula Bandha, the belly button lock, the root lock, and the throat lock. You hold completely filled with air, right? This teaches you that all of life exists in a single breath. This is how you grok the reality that all of your life is in this breath.
Oh, that's so cool. All of your life exists in a single breath.
Not just a single in a hypothetical, this one.
This breath.
Right. Our entire life is right here. All these stories, this crap that happened in the past, the stuff that we're going to do in the future, it's not real. Maybe it was real, maybe it will be real, but like all of your life is happening right here.
Really gives a new definition to the power of now. One single breath, this breath.
This breath, right? And that's why the yogis do this, right? And so that you do this full exhale kumbhaka, you do the full inhale kumbhaka, and then you do what's called a cannonball breath, where you just like release. And it was maybe the 3rd or 4th cannonball of this class that I just like I was out of my body. Like I was just like shot, like I
breakthrough.
Like I felt my metaphysical soul like blast out of my body like a rocket. I was like looking down at it and I was just like gone. Like I was out of Chicago. I was out of America. I was in space and I was just like, what the fuck? But I could still see my body following instructions and doing these breathing patterns as prescribed by the teacher. And this teacher, is Guru Nishan in Chicago. She's like extraordinarily powerful witch, massive, energy and like beautiful knowledge. And I didn't know her. Like I just went, it was like a class, but like since then I've come to know her story and I understood why she was able to guide me through this experience. But yeah, man, I was like,
it's interesting too that your body continues to do the breathing. It's like a part of your consciousness stays to continue the routine.
Yeah.
And then
I was just gone.
Yeah.
Like I was gone. Like I was full on in a hallucinating state. I was
basically a DMT trip.
Not basically, yes. 100%.
100%.
100% DMT trip. Like I just like had played with the air hunger hard enough. And it was, I think, my first conscious DMT trip.
Amazing.
And it was just like, poof, and I was like experiencing full day and night cycles as if the day had continued. Right. And I like fast forwarded a few years and I met my wife in this version of life. And then I was like, this version of life is weird. And then I hopped to another timeline and I met that version of my wife and we had kids, right? And I could remember from that experience all the life choices that I had made in that timeline up until that moment. And then I would go into another timeline and then another timeline. And I was just like having fun. I was like, oh shit, this is crazy. This is dope. But the thing is, I didn't even know that I was still tripping in a yoga class. I didn't have that conception of like a possibility. Like I had just like thought that, I don't know, life continued and I was just in this version of life. And then something would happen. Like it's likely that, it's tough for me to like exactly remember, but it's likely that every time we changed positions and did a new breathing exercise, then I would like enter into a new timeline. Right. And that was like the momentary like return to my body, and then poof, blast off again. And then the momentary return to my body and poof, blast off again. And, I was just like appalled. I was like, I remember when the gongs came and she was like, come back to your body, come back to your body. I was exploring one of the timelines and I was like, no, hold on. I'm not done here. There's so much here. and I came back to my body and like I woke up from this shavasana and I look around at the like 10 other people in this class. I'm just like, am I the only one that, and by this time in my life, I had done acid in like high dosages. I had done mushrooms.
Yeah.
I'd done MDMA. I had combinations thereof,
You were familiar with the psychedelic experience.
I was like full on psychonaut,
But
like
nothing like this.
The hardest trip of my life.
Wow.
The hardest trip of my life. And like, I didn't have this vocabulary of the jhanas. I didn't know what I just went through, but in reading the description of what the jhanas were, this was level 6.
What is level 6 again?
Yeah, you may feel. So in level 6 is, so level 5 is the infinity of space. Level 6 is the infinity of consciousness. Ooh. So I feel like there was like sort of an oscillation, and like by the end of it, I got to level 6. But the 5th through the 8th jhanas are the absorptions without form. This is because they refer to states of consciousness where there is no perception of a form or body. They correspond to heavenly realms which also have no form or body. That is, beings reborn to the formless realms, which are some of the heavenly planes that do not have a body but do have pleasant existences. It's very, like, I don't even know what that means reading it to you, but I remember what it felt like. You enter the 5th jhana by remaining in the utter peacefulness state, which is the previous jhana, and then shifting your attention to the boundaries of your being. You focus your attention outward as if you are watching yourself from above. You may feel like you are floating above your body at first. You put your attention on your body so that it feels like you are filling the room. This is expanded further and further so that you fill your whole neighborhood, city, country, continent, and then to space itself. You find yourself in this huge expanse of empty space. Right? So that's what I was describing, like I blasted up out of my body and like I saw my body from super far away. I was in space. That's level 5, right? So the infinity of consciousness, and the descriptions of these states get more and more
wild,
ridiculous as you go, because there's no words.
Yeah.
There's no, like, the experience is so overwhelming. The time dilation is so insane. You have no frame of reference, right? I feel like when you're on psychedelics, when you're with other people, when you're in an environment where you're just like, oh, I'm on drugs. Like I need, like, there's this constant like undercurrent of like, am I safe? Right? But when you're in a yoga class or you're sitting on a yoga mat, breathing, there's no fear of your safety. So you just completely disembody.
Yeah.
Right? So level 6 is the infinity of consciousness. You enter the 6th jhana by realizing that the infinite space you occupy includes your consciousness. So you shift your attention to infinite consciousness instead of infinite space. You may feel at one with all nature and existence, but do not be fooled. This is not full enlightenment. Concentration is further increased, and there is still one-pointedness of mind. Right?
And what is the next jhana?
The next one is the no-thingness. That's the complete non-separation. The 7th jhana is entered by realizing that the content of infinite consciousness is basically empty of any permanent nature. Right? When you're in infinite consciousness, you're like, oh, everything here is malleable. Everything here is a figment of my imagination. There's no permanence anywhere. There is nothing in the universe that has any permanent essence to it. We realize that everything is in constant flux. Right? That is often experienced by moderate dosages of acid.
Wouldn't you say that I amness is permanent? That feeling of I am. Perception.
Maybe in the sense that I am all and all is I kind of thing. Is like I am you, you am I. Oh, how does it go? I am you, you am I. We are all something. There's one of the mantras that's like that. But yes, I do think that that's what it is.
What's the next jhana?
The next one is neither perception nor non-perception, and that's when the I am dissolves. There's no I. It's just am. It's just right. Like people talk about like om. Like what is om?
Yeah.
Like, what is ah? Like why do all these mantras have this like this o sound with the m and this ah sound? Like in this lineage of yoga, they say like the main mantra is Sat Nam, right? And Sat Nam means the truth within me, right? Like the infiniteness inside of me, underneath what everyone thinks is me, underneath all the layers that I think is me. There is this like infinite kernel, right? In Buddhism, they call this the bodhicitta, right? It's like the brilliant gem that no matter how many layers of rock cover it, can always be found again, untarnished.
I love that.
Right? These layers of rock being the traumas of your life.
Yeah.
When it comes to the meditation on the 6 anxieties, which is the second of the neuroplastic workouts that we describe in the book, bodhicitta is like the central thing. It's that like when all else fails, when every form of conscious and subconscious thinking does not serve to alleviate your suffering, you meditate on bodhicitta. You meditate on the Satnam, right? And the way that these Kundalini yogis close their long meditations is, you're in this like really intense psychedelic state, and you just spent like 11 minutes or 22 minutes or 33 minutes like on the same phrase over and over again, like Ad Guru Name, Sat Guru Name, Jugad Guru Name, Siddhi Guru Dev Name, like I bow to the primal wisdom. I bow to the timeless wisdom. I bow to the infinite wisdom. I bow to the wisdom that no matter how many times forgotten will always be rediscovered. Right? You just said that shit in your brain for like 11 minutes, right? And then
I can feel the power of those words.
Right?
I bow to the timeless wisdom.
Yeah.
Wow.
The bow to the wisdom that no matter how many times forgotten, will always be rediscovered. And then at the end of that, and this one, the Sat Nam is more about the vibration. You just like, you rub your hands together, you're in prayer pose, and you're like, Sat Nam. Right? And you feel that sound coming through your ears, but you feel that vibration in your throat. And it's just like, of course it's in another language, but you hold that concept of like the truth within me, where you're integrating all of these mantras, like which are new ideas. They're not ideas that you believe. A mantra should not be something that you believe. It's something that you're trying to program yourself into believing.
Good distinction. Yeah.
Right? If you're just doing, like people, I see this all the time with like the fake wokes, like just talking about like, oh, well, my mantra is da 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 da. It's like some shit that you saw on Instagram. It's like, no. These mantras, these concepts were designed over thousands of years of experimentation. And they didn't know what they were doing. Like from a fMRI brain scan visualization level. But what we have now learned about what they achieved is that certain mantras, when you really think about the concept in the presence of a neuroplastic brain state, a highly malleable flow state, you stimulate blood flow into specific regions of the brain. Think about that, dude. Through thousands of years of experimentation, they figured out if I think this concept while I do this breath pattern, it grows my amygdala, which makes you bulletproof to fight or flight response stimuli. It strengthens the neural connectivity of your temporal parietal junction. The temporal parietal junction, the TPJ, is the part of your brain that's responsible for being able to visualize what your physical body looks like outside of itself.
Mm-hmm.
And these yogis and Buddhists that have highly developed TPJs, they can not only visualize their physical body outside of themselves, they can visualize their metaphysical body outside of themselves. They can think, what does this person think of me? Right? How does my action right now, my decision, affect people that I will never meet.
Mm.
You know, and it's because of an atrophied TPJ that you have these Fortune 500 CEOs making these decisions that ruin millions of people's lives, and they sleep peacefully at night because there's just no blood flowing into that TPJ.
You mentioned the word atrophied, and it reminded me of something I heard you say about joy. Joy atrophied.
Yeah.
And I'd love it if you can talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that joy, well, it's not an I think. It is the experience of myself in business and other entrepreneurs and executives when you catch them in a, you know, slightly loose, you know, a little bit of drunk state, you know, maybe at a cocktail party, you know, they'll talk about how difficult it is to have emotion in the workplace because you get penalized.
Mm.
You get penalized if you don't make an unemotional, rational decision, right? And over time, I mean, the brain is a beautiful organ, right? Over time, in order to cope with the difficulty of, let's say your boss asks you to do something that you think is morally incorrect, but if you don't do it, you're going to get fired. And if you get fired, you're not going to bring home that paycheck. You're not going to be able to put food on the family for your table, or for food on the table for your family. You're not going to be able to pay your mortgage. Your family's not going to have a place to live. What's more important, your family or how you feel about the situation? Right? And so in order to cope with that quandary, the mind neuroplasticizes itself to take that emotional stimulus and route it around the amygdala. So over time, blood no longer flows to the region.
And that's what gets smaller.
And that's why it gets smaller. You decrease the neural density, right? And this happens, you know, like with respect to the ADHD and autism, the anterior cingulate cortex, where people like us were born with an underdeveloped anterior cingulate cortex. This is the part of the brain that's responsible for like delayed gratification. Like if I do this thing I don't want to do, it's going to lead to some positive outcome, right? That's why ADHD kids, you tell them to do their homework and they don't want to do it. It's like, fuck you, right? But if you give them Adderall, they'll do it because what Adderall does is it pushes blood flow straight into the ACC.
And what is the better solution for these kids?
The better solution is the better solution is straight up neuroplastic training. It's that, you know, if you do this breathing exercise, but of course there's the whole like education about like, you know, you got to make it fun for them. You got to make it feel good. Right. And that is the side benefit of doing the mantra training with the breathing patterns, that it actually does feel good. Right. Part of the reason why ADHD, autism, neurodivergent kids have often misdiagnosed with anger issues or bipolar disorder is because self-soothing. My body doesn't feel good. That loud noise bothered me, right? But if I can find the strength to make myself feel good, then I don't have these outbursts, right? And you know, stimulating blood flow into the neuro, like, so we talked about these 8 pillars of joy, which is it was one of the tracks that's publicly available on SoundCloud. If anyone were to just simply listen to this track every day for 40 days, it's a 5-minute track, breathe along to the drums, listen to the mantra, like think along with the lyrics, like the joy of changing my perspective, the joy of humility, the joy of humor, the joy of acceptance, the joy of forgiveness, the joy of gratitude, the joy of compassion, the joy of generosity. Each of these 8 pillars of joy have kind of popped up into different gratitude practices or different, generosity is contained in the philanthropy sector, right? Like gratitude is contained in the journaling world. Acceptance is, you know, I think there's like a Christian prayer around accepting the things that I can control and the things that I can't.
So it's kind of proliferated itself into
it's
the
proliferated
world.
itself, but it's all segmented.
Uh-huh.
You know, and if you contain them all into just this one sort of sequence of thoughts while you are inside of a flow state, you can very quickly reprogram your mind. And you're not reprogramming your mind in the sense of like software. So in my book, I really break it down, like, and I'm very strict about your beliefs, your belief system That's the software that's running in the head, right? And then your brain, the physical organ of the brain, that's the hardware. That's like the hard drive and the CPU, right? And the mind is the firmware in between. Right? So when people talk about like-minded people,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of times like-minded people are organizing themselves based on their beliefs. But people can have the same beliefs and very different brain hardware. Right? And that's where the like-minded thing kind of falls apart. Right? That's where the conversation around what does it mean to be like-minded kind of, it gets confusing. But and especially when it comes to like religious debates, right? Like my God says this and your God says that, and my God's not even on the map, you know? It's like I believe in the Force, you know, I believe in AI, I believe in, you know, flow states, whatever, right? Like everybody has a brain. And that brain, all of our brains have the same structures. They're just variably sized in relation to each other. And now we know that by doing the specific exercises, these neuroplastic workouts, that we can stimulate these specific regions of the brain that contribute to all of us getting anxiety, depression, PTSD, and addiction. So I try to stay out of belief system topics. I try to stay out of mind games. I'm only interested in brain training.
For those that are interested in this sequence and this brain training, where can they start to work on this?
The best place to start is the 8 Pillars of Joy. It's the simplest breathing pattern. It's a long, slow, deep breath. You sort of, sitting comfortably in a chair. You can sit in a chair. You can sit on the couch. You could even do it in bed, right? But the pattern, what the breath pattern does is it creates a nervous system memory anchor, right? And that nervous system memory anchor is linked to a visualization, and that visualization is linked to a web of concepts, right? And this is the way that you can immediately long-term potentiate. Long-term potentiation is like the conversion of short-term memories into long-term memories, right? And now we know that potentiation is neuroplasticity. It's actually the growth of new neurons as described in the book Atomic Habits, right? And so the atomic habit for anyone struggling with anxiety, depression, PTSD, or addiction is, at least in my biased point of view, and as the neuroscience is supporting my recommendation, the 8 Pillars of Joy breathing exercise.
Can you guide us through that
right now
on the podcast?
Yeah, absolutely.
And our people who are listening, will they be able to follow along? And
they will be. Yeah,
Beautiful.
They will be. I can describe all the different body movements. It's very simple. And so if you're listening, you can, I guess, skip ahead 5 minutes if you don't want to participate. But if you are in a place where you can just simply do some breathing without being disturbed, sitting up straight with your shoulders back, chin slightly tucked. All right, closing the eyes, taking a long, slow inhale through the nose. And as you're inhaling, put all of your mind's attention singularly focused on the words, the joy of changing my perspective. Right. So take a long, slow, deep inhale through the nose, letting the words rumble, the joy of changing my perspective, the joy of changing my perspective, the joy of changing my perspective. And do it silently in your head. You don't have to do it out loud. But then when you get to the top, inhale some more, visualize the bottom of the rib cage opening. Inhale some more, visualize the collarbones opening. Inhale one more time, thinking the joy of changing my perspective. Out slowly through the nose. And this is a very quiet exhale, as if, the yogis say, as if you're breathing out through a single strand of hair, letting the words rumble. Joy of changing my perspective, joy of changing my perspective, joy of changing my perspective, all the way to the bottom, squeezing the belly button, engaging the abdominal muscles to push all the air out of the lungs. Squeeze, the joy of changing my perspective. Relax the belly, breathe in, thinking the joy of humility. Letting the words rumble, joy of humility, all the way up, all the way, filling the lungs as much as you can, the joy of humility. Inhale some more, open the ribs. Inhale some more, open the collarbones. Inhale once more. Exhale slowly, the joy of humility, out through the nose. Letting the words rumble over and over again, the joy of humility, the joy of humility. Focusing only on the word, not on where the ripples of the mind go. At the bottom, squeezing the belly button, engaging the abs to push all the air out of your lungs. Squeeze the joy of humility. Relax, breathe in the joy of humor. Thinking the joy of humor, the joy of humor, the joy of humor, all the way to the top of the breath, filling the lungs completely, stretching the ribs. Inhale some more, open the ribs. Inhale some more, open the collarbones. Inhale once more, the joy of humor. Out slowly through the nose. At the bottom of the breath, engaging the abs, pulling them in, tucking the tummy in and slightly up, squeezing, pushing all the air out, squeezing the joy of humor. Relax, breathe in the joy of acceptance. Thinking the words joy of acceptance, joy of acceptance, joy of acceptance. Don't think about anything else but the joy of acceptance. Inhale some more, open the ribs. Inhale some more, open the collarbones. Inhale once more, joy of acceptance. Out slowly through the nose. Joy of acceptance, joy of acceptance, joy of acceptance, joy of acceptance. And at the bottom, squeezing the belly button, pulling it in and up, pushing all the air out of your lungs, joy of acceptance. Relax, breathe in the joy of forgiveness. And joy of forgiveness, joy of forgiveness. This might be the most difficult one for a lot of people, but focusing on the concept of the joy that can be found in forgiveness. Inhale some more, open the ribs. Inhale some more, open the collarbones. Inhale once more, joy of forgiveness. Out slowly through the nose. Joy of forgiveness, joy of forgiveness, joy of forgiveness. At the bottom, engaging the belly button, pulling it in and up, pushing all the air out of your lungs. Squeeze, squeeze the joy of forgiveness. Relax, breathe in the joy of gratitude. Letting the words rumble and fill the mind as the air is filling the lungs. Joy of gratitude, joy of gratitude, joy of gratitude. Inhale some more, open the ribs. Inhale some more, open the collarbones. Inhale once more, the joy of gratitude. Out slowly. As you deplete the lungs, joy of gratitude, joy of gratitude, joy of gratitude. At the bottom, pulling the belly button in and up, squeezing the abs, joy of gratitude. Squeeze, squeeze. Relax, breathe in the joy of compassion. Inhaling all the way, filling your body, filling your soul with the joy of compassion, filling your mind, joy of compassion, joy of compassion. Inhale some more, open the ribs. Inhale some more, open the collarbones. Inhale once more, joy of compassion. Out slowly through the nose. Joy of compassion, joy of compassion, joy of compassion, joy of compassion. At the bottom, squeezing the abs. Squeeze again, push all the air out. Squeeze some more, joy of compassion, all of your mind's attention. Relax, breathe in the joy of generosity. Rumbling the mind, joy of generosity, joy of generosity, joy of generosity. Inhale some more, open the ribs. Inhale some more, open the collarbones. Inhale some more. Exhale slowly, the joy of generosity all the way down. Joy of generosity, joy of generosity, joy of generosity. This is the final exhale. So as we get to the bottom, we're going to exhale as we did before, squeezing the belly button as we did before, but this time at the bottom, engage the root lock. This is the perineum muscle. This is the muscle between where you pee and where you poo. Squeezing the root lock, squeezing the belly button tight with your lungs fully exhaled. Do not breathe in. Hold. Hold at the bottom. Big inhale. Taking the biggest inhale of the day. At the top of the breath, squeezing the belly button in the outward position. Breathe in some more. Engage the root lock. Breathe in some more. Put the tip of the tongue to the top of the mouth. Tuck the chin. Holding these 3 points, the belly button, the root lock, tip of the tongue, top of the mouth. Breathe in some more. Hold your breath. Do not breathe out. Do a cannonball breath. Keeping the eyes closed, relaxing the breath. Take a long, slow inhale. Long, slow exhale. Try not to fidget. And this is when it's customary to think as you're inhaling Sat, as you're exhaling Nam, the truth within me. Right, so we just did those 8 pillars of joy, thinking about all the different facets of joy. Now integrate that with the truth inside of you, underneath all the layers of other things that describe you. Sat, Nam, Sat, Nam. And that's it. How do you feel?
Wow.
Yeah. Describe it. How did you feel in your body?
You know, what I noticed was on the inhale, and you said inhale more, it becomes harder to inhale. I suppose that's something that you gain over time with practice. It felt like I'd already reached the maximum.
Indeed.
And then you're like, inhale more. And I'm like, I have to exhale to inhale.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that when you reach that point?
Well, so the reality of, I guess, modern life is, like when you stand with proper posture and your shoulders back, right? And then you roll your shoulders forward to use your phone, or you're rolling your shoulders forward to use the keyboard. You lose 30% lung capacity just with that motion, right? And so the more time you spend on your phone, the more time you spend on your computer, your lungs atrophy. And not the lungs themselves, but it's the muscles in between your rib cage. They get used to being in a smaller range of motion, right? So the elasticity of these specific muscles in between your rib cage kind of lock your lungs into a 70% prison, right? And so doing this exercise, it's not just a mental workout where you're like stimulating blood flow to the regions of the brain. It's also a physical workout where we're reversing atrophy of the lungs. And one of the amazing things, the benefits of this practice is that oxygen is the limiting reagent in cellular respiration, which is how your body converts glucose into energy, right? In the absence of sufficient oxygen, your mitochondria in your cells will turn 1 glucose into 2 ATPs. The ATP is the unit of energy. In the presence of sufficient oxygen, 1 glucose can turn into 36 ATP. 18 times more energy, right? Crazy, right? And we just did 8 deep breaths and you feel energized. Like I feel more energy than the coffee that we took at the beginning of the call, right? So if you were to sustain that, that was less than 5 minutes of breathing that we just did. But if you were to sustain that for 11 minutes, for 22 minutes, right? How much oxygen your body would be having coursing through the veins, every single cell able to get enough oxygen to produce 36 ATPs.
Which is giving you energy.
Which is giving you the most pure energy. I mean, the energy we get from caffeine, it's a central nervous system stimulant. CNS stims. Give me the stims. Right? It's great. It feels good. Adderall. Give it to me, right? But what we're dealing with here is pure biological, physical energy.
Which is what we're all seeking.
Which is what we're seeking. Indeed. And, this, regular practice, habitual repetition of this practice will actually increase your resting metabolic rate. And, some very exciting work that we're doing with a tech company out of San Francisco. I don't want to talk too much about this research as it's ongoing, but we have high hopes that we can affect heart rate variability in a positive direction. Heart rate variability being the kind of metric that the Whoop sensors is very popular among endurance athletes.
Is it similar to what heart math is doing with coherence?
I'm not sure what heart math is, but I will check it out because probably. I feel like in the recent times, well, not really recent, but like ever since the Apple Watch popularized having biosensors on your body, because of course biohackers have been doing this for decades, right? But Apple Watch has introduced this concept to the general population, and your Apple Watch will measure your heart rate variability different times over the period of a day. And people are starting to pay attention to the point that now they have devices that are very, very successful in the market that are measuring your heart rate variability on a millisecond level, right? And the higher it is, the better. And so, you know,
Of all the trackers, is there any specific one that you prefer?
I'm actually not super well educated in it. It just so happens that one of my friends is the founder of this tech company in San Francisco that is working on measuring emotion through heart rate variability. So we have a lot of collaboration to do, and I'll let you know what the data shows. But there is a breathing pattern that the yogi, my master, taught me that can speed up your heartbeat to inhuman levels without giving you a heart attack. There's another breathing pattern that can slow your heartbeat down to inhuman levels without causing a problem.
Is this the knowledge that the yogis had for millennia?
This is, they were just playing around. These crazy people in the mountains, stretching and breathing because they were bored. And it's not that they were bored. It's that people don't realize how sort of trivial it is in the modern world to alter your state. Right? Like if I'm stressed, let's walk down to the corner and have a beer.
Right.
A drink. Let's roll up a joint. Let's take a pill. Let's, eat some plant medicine that's readily available from the local dealer.
I remember reading a book where the author was describing how every culture through civilization is always seeking a change in consciousness through some means.
Absolutely. It's human, because the burden of consciousness is something, another thing that Alan Watts talks about that I love is that, there's only two ways that humans contend with the burden of consciousness. It's too much to just sit in it. No. I am not cool with my consciousness, right? You either subvert it through the use of drugs and alcohol, put it down, put the consciousness in the cage.
Stifle it.
Yeah. If it gets out, poke it with a stick. Get back in the cage, you filthy bugger, right? And or use go up.
You elevated.
You up. Through education, through meditation, through practice, right? And that's when spiritual egotism comes in. A spiritual conceitedness, right? Like my guru is better than your guru. My practice is better than your practice. My philosophy is better than your philosophy. I hate that. It's tiresome. But I myself am kind of guilty of it. I'm saying, all your like software belief systems, all of your firmware mind training things, let's train the brain. The brain is the best way. Right? And unfortunately, I have to play the game because we live in a culture of miseducation. We live in a culture of misinformation. And this method that I'm sharing is the oldest method. Everyone's trying so many things to get around, to find some alternate way, to take Xanax, take barbiturates, to jump out of an airplane, so you can get that adrenaline rush.
And you're saying it's all in the breath.
And I'm just saying, just sit in your chair, do this breath every day for the next 40 days, and I can prove it with a brain scan. If you can, a brain scan is a very expensive thing. It's like $3,500 for this because insurance won't cover it. Insurance won't pay for an fMRI scan unless you have a traumatic brain injury. And so only for the wealthiest people will they spend $3,500 at the beginning, go for 40 days, and then at the end, another $3,500 just to verify that, yes, your amygdala has increased in density, right? The paper that I base, basically my entire life's work off of at this point was published by this Professor Richard Davidson that I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation. They published this in 2009. And what they did is they were trying to measure how quickly you could observe neuroplastic change. Because, the yogis that they were testing, 10,000 hours, 20,000 hours, 30,000 hours, like obscene, you had to dedicate your life to it. But could a normal person achieve benefits from this? And in how little time? So they just set up this experiment with the control group was doing 30 minutes a day, 2 weeks of cognitive behavioral therapy, which at the time, and I think still to this day in the psychology world, is considered the gold standard in PTSD treatment, right? But CBT is basically they traumatize you over and over again until you're desensitized to it. the experimental group was doing 30 minutes of the Tonglen meditation, which is the third of the neuroplastic workouts I describe in the book. 30 minutes of this, 2 weeks, brain scans before and after. In the control group, there was 0 neuroplastic activity anywhere in the brain. In the group that was doing this Tonglen Buddhist meditation for 30 minutes for 2 weeks, 100% of the study participants showed neuroplastic growth, and the average growth was 30% in the amygdala region in just 2 weeks, right? Now, the issue with that is confronted with the neuroscience of habit formation that we talked about in Atomic Habits, that most New Year's resolutions fail because people try to bite off too much. In order for a habit to become automatic, such as running for 3 miles after work every day, which takes about an hour, doing an hour of yoga every day, it can take 250 days for the neurons to grow that cause this behavior to become automatic, to the point that if you didn't do your hour of yoga, you would feel weird. Like, I'm at that point now. Like, I cannot go to sleep if I haven't done not an hour, but like I need to do something, or I just like, I can feel my nervous system wigging out. But for a small habit, such as learning to drink more water every day, this can take as little as 20 days, right? So 2 weeks is 14 days, right? And what we're talking about here is not growth in a vacuum. We're talking about growth and maintenance, right? So what this experiment that the Professor Davidson showed was that we can stimulate the growth. The neurons grow, but then after the experiment, all those people just returned back into their normal lives, right? With this, the mushroom trip that you were talking about, how you have like an extreme shift of consciousness, right? After the trip, unless you reinforce that belief system, that neuron will atrophy back into its natural state.
I'm so glad you brought this up. It's why people have these epiphanies and then they find that they're backsliding in whatever insights they got. You have to integrate it somehow into your day-to-day life.
Absolutely.
Taking action on it, doing the homework from the mushrooms, whatever it takes to train those neurons.
Absolutely. And the Buddhists, they have an analogy. It's like the second you stop meditating, or rather, bhavana, mental cultivation, is like rowing a boat upstream. The second you stop rowing, the river carries you back downstream. It's only natural. It's only natural. So without this repetition for the specific number of days, right? And what we have kind of experimentally verified is that this 250-day thing, it's impossible. Right, like the sonic acupuncture workshop that we're doing at the music festivals, that is an hour-long workshop. Well, 45 to an hour, depending on how much explanation I do in between each exercise. If I were to get people to sign up for a program and say, like, we're going to do an hour of work every single day, and you are going to grow all these regions of the brain so that you will be bulletproof. You will never have to worry about anxiety, depression, PTSD, or addiction. 99% of them will fall off. If not 100%, because it's just too much, because their life is not designed to make room for an hour of additional activity on top of their job, their family, their partner, whatever other hobbies they have, Netflix, right? Woodworking, whatever you do, you've made time to do it. And that's why we begin the Atomic Habit, 5 minutes a day. Eight long, slow, deep breaths for the 8 pillars of joy. You can do that. You can grow that habit and make that permanent in only 40 days.
And the approach uses every second day or 40 days consecutively?
Well, it's better to do every 40 days consecutively, but also in Atomic Habits, the neuroscience of habit formation, they demonstrated that skipping one day does not negatively impact long-term neural growth.
It's the second day that gets you.
It's the second day that gets you, indeed. So that's why we do it. We meet every other day live, just to make sure that you do the homework. But if you miss one day, you're out.
Yeah.
You can't come back to the rest of the sessions because you're not going to get the benefit. So there is sort of like this, I don't know, motivation that we start as a community, we start as a cohort, as a group, and if you miss one day, I'm sorry. You can begin with the next cohort. But by skipping one day, you're missing 3 days of practice.
Yeah. For those that are interested in to check out more information about your work, your book, the 40-day program, where can you send them?
Well, first I would say find us on Instagram at Don't Punk Out. That's where we do most of the announcements and marketing, and on there you'll find links to the book website to pre-order it, which is don'tpunkoutbook.com. But for the 40-day training, the organization that's holding all of this research, it's called the BAEWA, which is the Big Amygdala Energy World Alliance. It's BAEWA.org.
Charles, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you for sharing with us your stories, your experiences, your wisdom, and your energy and your presence.
Thank you so much, James. And I really hope that we further the mission.
Yes.
It's a beautiful world that can be created when through these psychedelic experiences, we can get everyone to check their ego, to see their ego, and begin building it in a positive way. And I think the war on drugs was a huge kind of side turn for society, where marijuana became the gateway drug to all these dangerous things. But truly, in this next paradigm, mushrooms, psychedelics are the gateway drug to healthy spirituality.
I feel that.
It's because it's tough, honestly. I mean, it was my on-ramp.
It's a great on-ramp.
It's your on-ramp.
Absolutely.
It doesn't require you to sit down and do these weird-ass breathing exercises.
It's very friendly.
It's very friendly.
It's not super intense for a beginner.
And once you're there, you don't forget.
Yes.
And then the knowledge that through these breathing exercises, you can get the same experience. And in fact, with training, an even better trip that lasts for the rest of your life. Come on.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful time. Thank you so much, James. You're a beautiful human and a beautiful mission. And it's an honor to be part of your constellation.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much. For those listening, you can find us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube. And if you want to join the mission, check it out at 1billionhumans.com. Go check out Charles Morgan's work. I'll have all the links in the show notes. And any last final words to the listener on how they can live an epic, aligned life?
Never skip Joy Day.
Never skip Joy Day.
Joy is a habit. Never skip Joy Day.
Beautiful. Cool. Thank you, man. Thank you so much.
Take care. Thank you, everyone.